Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I'm your host, Joe Kuzma, seconded today, once again, by Black and Gold, until he's dead and cold. I can't say till I'm dead and cold. That's your tagline. Brian Roach. Brian, what's going on?
Oh, it's a lovely day in the nation.
You feeling good about that Steelers victory on Christmas Day?
Absolutely. How can you not feel good? It was a great game, and once they turned it on in the fourth quarter, it just showed you the kind of offense they have and what they can do.
21 points. I would have never guessed it the way that the game was going. I mean, you know what? And I said this, I think, maybe a week or two ago. And I said, you know what? This team can win so many different ways. One way that we haven't seen yet is defensive scoring, really. I guess maybe the Cleveland game. So there hasn't been like a pick six that has really decided the game, or Antonio Brown punt return, and those are still possibilities. But I mean, they're winning with 6 Chris Boswell field goals, or Le'Veon Bell nearly getting 300 all-purpose yards, or Ben's arm. They're so versatile in the ways that they can attack teams. But, man, I'll tell you what, that game had me on pins and needles. Some of my buddies over at Stiller Gang, I think somebody messaged me or asked if I still had fingernails left. I said, no fingernails, nor any hair. Thanks a lot, you two, you and Eric, with my bold predictions saying bald predictions. For those that don't know, this is by choice. Yes, I have genetics that I probably wouldn't have much hair anyway, but I shave my head by choice. So there's some sayings that are inappropriate I won't mention, but let's just say bald is beautiful.
There you go.
So, Brian, you, my friend, were on last week, and we were talking postseason and playoffs, and now that picture is a lot more clear, and there's 1 week left, and all the AFC teams are locked in, and I have to retract and correct myself because, once again, when I'm running on basically coffee for this whole holiday weekend, just, pedal to the metal. I'm sorry, I forgot his name already, and I'll have to look it up on YouTube, but a frequent commenter for the podcast. It's also, this same show, depending on where you're listening, this is available on multiple platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, also YouTube, and the YouTube commenters are frequent, and I appreciate that from you guys. And I have to correct myself because he did point out I thought the Raiders were locked in at number 2. They're not, so there's still some minor jockeying. The teams themselves, though, the 6 teams are pretty much set, so the Patriots could still even fall out of the top seed. And then there's the Raiders are still in there. The Steelers are most definitely. I don't think there's any way they could move out of the 3 spot. I think there was some.
Right.
We're going to talk about that in a second. Houston's in there at 4 right now, and then Kansas City currently is 5, and the Dolphins are currently 6. But there is a little bit of positioning that could happen this weekend. So I guess the big question is, does the Browns game really factor into any of this mathematics, statistics, analytics, whatever you want to call it, the bracketing?
Not at all. When we look at it, this is the first time in a long time we've really had a truly meaningless game. Whether we win or lose, it won't change a thing for us. It won't change a thing for anybody else. The only thing that you could maybe say is that it would be much nicer to roll into the playoffs on a 7-game winning streak than on a 1-game losing streak.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, nobody wants to lose, but I think everyone would understand, and Mike Tomlin said in his press conference, the big question is if they're going to rest some of these guys, and we're going to get into that maybe a little later, and if not, in another episode, because as we were saying off the air, typically everybody that tunes into the show knows I do a review and a preview of the game. So there's usually one before the game and one after the game. And I don't really know what I'm going to talk about with the Browns because it's the same thing like they're asking Tomlin if he's going to sit players. I mean, he only has so many guys on a roster and so many inactive spots.
Yep.
So there could be some starters that are going to be rested, but some of those young guys, man, if they get in there, I mean, you're going to tell me that Vince Williams is going to lay down because they're playing the Cleveland Browns or
not at all.
Or Landry Jones, who could be a free agent next year and is a backup. This could be his audition for a job somewhere if he's not retained. So I doubt he's going to just be, I guess I'll say laid down again. And we had a great quote that's going to go up here shortly from Ramon Foster talking about when the other team, if he feels the other team ever quits, like the defensive lineman that they face as the offensive lineman. And he says, never, but I could tell when we win. And he said basically that's when they have to start giving themselves a pep talk or they're staring at the ground. And I thought that was really great, but it just goes to show you that even if a team is down X points, are they demoralized? I don't think that they're going to play any less harder. And when you get guys that don't get that much playing time, they're looking to impress the coaching staffs and everything else. So this Browns game, I mean, it's quite possible the Steelers can give them a run for the let's put it this way. The Cleveland fans, who I have many in my family, felt that they got the Christmas miracle this weekend. So they think that now they're rolling into Pittsburgh. They have a chance to win. They beat the Chargers, who NFL memes or somebody put out, one of these parody pages put out that they're investigating removing the Chargers from the NFL now for their loss to Cleveland. And then these Browns fans are like, they think that there's a chance to win. Not only they think they could beat us with all the starters. Now, mind you,
they're smoking something.
They're smoking. They're drinking. I think they're obtaining prescription medication for whatever they need in order to maintain their sanity for a full NFL season. I mean, they win one game. They were what now? 1-14, and this is how crazy this is. And my one buddy, I'm gonna call him out. We call him Double E, and that's because of his initials. And Double E here posts on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, or the game was on Christmas Eve, and he says. Wow, what a great Christmas gift. Not only a win, but this was after the afternoon game, so the 49ers won as well, because if the 49ers lose, the Browns technically blow it and no longer have the top seed. So it's like, hey,
right.
I always think of Sanford and Son, where he's like, you big dummy. And and that's what I think of there with the Browns. It's like, but really, I tell all these people too, it's not that they beat the Chargers, it's like the Chargers beat themselves. And so the 49ers lose, and he says, wow, a win, and we still get to keep the first or the top draft pick. And I'm just shaking my head over here. It's like, this is what you guys have to look forward to every single year. So this is the mentality. They beat the Chargers, the lowly Chargers, who somehow that Mike McCoy, head coach, I was talking with Nate last week about this, and I'm like, I don't know how he still has a job. Rex doesn't.
Rex doesn't, yeah.
Gus Bradley doesn't. Some of these guys they're trying to figure out what they got. I wonder if these coaches actually fight any type of changes or challenges from their front office. Like their front office wants to see, well, we got this, young stud that's sitting here on the bench. We want him to play. And the guy's like, no, we don't want him to play or get injured for that last game. And they're kind of like, screw you. You're fired. Hey, are you going to do what I ask? Oh, yes, sir. Interim coach. Here we go. That's how a special teams guy or a quarterback's coach or something gets like elevated to the next level. So,
yeah.
Anyways, Browns fans against the backups, riding into Pittsburgh on a one-game winning streak, and they think they're going to win. But ultimately, I don't see the Steelers laying down for this. And
Not at all.
And this game doesn't mean much, so, or other than a win or a loss. So
and I think you make a good point. It doesn't mean anything as far as the standings go. It doesn't mean anything as far as the big picture goes. But for the guys who are going to play, it will mean something. Especially guys like you said, Vince Williams, DeMarcus Ayers, who made some really nice contributions on Christmas. He's probably going to get more playing time if he's on the roster still, and stays on the 53, which I think he will. And if he gets a hat, which you assume he will at this point, he's going to have some nice options. Kobe Hamilton will probably still get a lot of playing time. So you've got guys who can make a statement about themselves. Is Johnny Maxey still going to get to be on the D line? I would bet he is, because I don't think Tuitt's going to play. It has meaning in that sense. So I agree with you. I don't think that the Steelers are going to let down. I think they will play to the best of their capabilities based on who's in there. And from the standpoint of the running game, if D'Angelo Williams plays the first half or more and plays the whole game, you know what? That's not as big a drop off as it could be.
Yeah, exactly. He could easily put up $150. Especially with how the Browns have been playing. And I haven't looked at the stats to really preview the Browns yet. That is another conversation. But we were talking, and by the way, listeners, if you haven't seen Brian's article, it's up on steelcityunderground.com. All of this is detailed over there. Very detailed, in fact, that he has to explain himself a few times over, because this is going to start the crisscross from here. We're talking about whether... We're really talking about who are we rooting for this weekend besides the Steelers. Now that we've got the Browns game out of the way, it's kind of inconsequential. It's going to be like a preseason game, I think, where if we do see any of the killer bees out there, they may be out there for a limited portion of time, or they may be inactive entirely. So, and that's because you got guys like Derek Carr, who just got hurt with the Raiders, and the Raiders they probably have the most at stake this weekend. And I think everyone else, they maybe aside from the Texans, the Steelers may actually enter the wild card weekend with the best opportunity to rest their players. Where I'm not sure, you got New England and Miami, for example.
New England is still playing for the number 1 seed. If they lose to Miami and the Raiders win, then New England falls to number 2.
Exactly. So they can't just put Brady on the bench unless they do like they do the week before and go up 30 points or whatever like they did on the Jets. Yep. So that's a possibility. But if it's a tight game, and I think it could be a tight game, the Dolphins always surprise New England, and that's one thing that I look forward to every year, is to at least see New England lose in their division once, maybe.
Yeah.
They did lose to Buffalo, so but excuse me, that game is played in Miami as well. So there is a little bit of a home field there. The Patriots have to go on the road before entering the playoffs. So the Steelers got a little cushy here. They play at home last week. Tough game. Play at home this week. Play at home for sure next week by virtue of winning the division. So now, how do we get some more home games? And that's what we mean by who are we rooting for this weekend. All these other teams have to play their guys. So the question is, I guess the first two choices here, the disruptors in all of this, you mentioned the Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep. Those are our first two guys. We're going to play either Miami or Kansas City. And the question is, who do we want to play? And based on really the way both teams have been playing, it's a toss-up. I mean, the Dolphins have only lost one game in the last 9. Since they beat us, as much as I hate to remember that, they've been winning almost every week. They've lost once. And Kansas City has been much the same way. But when you think about it, it's bigger than just who do we want to play. It's who do we want New England or the Raiders to have to play as well. So for us, I think Miami is still the choice. We want Miami in Pittsburgh. it's a different team. We're a different team. I'd rather have Matt Moore as a quarterback of a team coming in than Alex Smith in the first round, because why wouldn't we want a backup, right? So on top of that, if Miami comes into our place, then that puts Kansas City and Houston. And I figure, quite honestly, whoever goes to Houston is probably going to win. That means that in the second round, if the wonderful Patriots have managed to keep the number 1 seed, that would put Kansas City going up to New England. And if you remember last year, Kansas City almost beat New England in the playoffs. So they have an outside chance of doing that again. So if that all happens, if we play Miami and the Texans play Kansas City, we win our game, take care of our business with Miami, that means we'd go to Oakland the following week, minus Derek Carr. That doesn't scare me. I think we win that game. And if Kansas City manages to beat New England, that means that we host the AFC Championship game in Pittsburgh against Kansas City.
Ultimately, that would be the goal, and we know all too well. Although, you know what? I'm going to go back on what I was just about to say was the Steelers are a better team at home. I still think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that's true of anybody. Road wins are tough to come by, but Steelers haven't been shabby on the road. They won their last 4 on the road. So they've had their win streak. The Dolphins with this win streak too, and just looking at it, I think I'd rather play the Dolphins and play the Dolphins at Heinz as well. When we initially played them, they were 1-4. And as I had warned everyone, now they did get some players back on that offensive line, and we had some just miserable, not exactly mistake-free football. Ben gets hurt in that game. A number of things happen. But the Dolphins have like one of the longest streaks of not go. They didn't leave Miami the entire month of October.
Yeah.
When we went down there, they started with a loss at the Titans. They beat us. They beat the Bills barely by a field goal. Not to only mention their only win when we played them was beating the Browns in overtime, once again by a field goal. They had a bye week. They beat the Jets by 4. They beat the Chargers by a touchdown. They go to San Diego. Imagine they stay over in California and don't fly back to the East Coast, and then they play the Rams. Then they bring San Francisco from the West Coast back to their place. That's advantageous to them. So really, the major travel here is when they go to Baltimore and just get blown out 38-6 by the Ravens. Then they end up hosting the Cardinals, beat them by a field goal as well. They handled the Jets, as just about everyone has, and then they just eked out a victory up in Buffalo against the Bills, which is why both Rex and Rob Ryan just got fired because they lost by a field goal in overtime to a backup quarterback and division rival and whatnot. Now they host the Patriots, and then they'll have to come on the road for Heinz. So as I look at the pattern here, I think the Dolphins are a team that's going to run out of steam eventually. They haven't been in this situation either. So, flip side, the Steelers are looking to actually have everybody intact, including Ben, Brown, and Bell. I think that really plays our advantage. Now, if we had to play Kansas City at home, I'd rather play Kansas City at home instead of in Kansas City. But so long as the Raiders don't fall from that 2 spot, that won't be an issue.
Right. And it's funny you say that. I'm looking at Kansas City's schedule, and the 2 losses that they have suffered since losing to us have both been at home. So since they came to our place, they won in Oakland, they won in Indy, they won in Carolina, they've won in Denver, and they won in Atlanta by a point is in a really good game. But they lost at home to Tennessee and lost at home to Tampa Bay. So clearly they've been a decent road team. Still, we're so much better at Heinz, and just having a full complement of players, for the playoffs is going to be a different feeling for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that we've if you're still following and keeping score at home and haven't shut the show off because this has got your brain twisted in a knot, we're going to add more teams to this equation. So if the Patriots and Raiders both lose, basically nothing happens.
Right.
If the Patriots lose and the Raiders win, they flip spots. But if they both lose and Kansas City wins, it would end up being that the Steelers would play the Dolphins and then have to, instead of the scenario we would like, playing Oakland without Derek Carr, would have to go to Arrowhead, which you just mentioned is not an impossible place to win at. And I don't want to discredit Arrowhead had been a tough place, but I think another thing is it's tough to keep these win streaks going. That's the one thing that kind of scares me. And all this is very tough. You even see it with college football. But when teams get hot at the end of the year, the Steelers have done it once where they've entered as a wild card. I remember the New York Giants several years ago. They end up going into the playoffs, I think, in the 5 seed. And they had won like 5 or 6 in a row heading into the postseason, and they end up beating the undefeated New England Patriots for their only loss of that year and win the Super Bowl. So you like to see teams get hot, stay hot. So the Chiefs themselves, I think they might be sputtering a little bit. The defense is definitely tough there, and still going to Arrowhead is probably a lot more difficult than going to Oakland. I would also imagine the weather is going to be a little bit nicer in Northern California than it will be in Kansas City. So,
one would think, yeah, I think there still is so much, turbulence in where everybody's going to land, and it's interesting that everything is falling to this last week of the schedule. But I think the bottom line of all this is, as much as it probably is going to make us all throw up in our mouths, we want New England to win this weekend. We want Oakland to win this weekend. If one of those two things doesn't happen, then we need Kansas City to lose to the Chargers. If those things all occur, then we would get Miami at home, and everything kind of plays out the way we want. So I think that ends up being our bottom line, is we have to root for New England and Oakland over the weekend. Or if we don't want to root, because I'm just not capable of rooting for the Patriots, we could choose to root against Miami.
Yeah, that's the enemy of my enemy is my friend,
yes.
kind of thing. So if anyone's really lost here, the entire foundation of all of this thought process is for the Steelers to play the AFC Championship at home instead of in Foxborough would have to be this situation that has been laid out. Keep the Patriots at 1, keep the Raiders at 2, send the Chiefs on the road to the Texans for Wild Card Weekend. The Steelers will be at home against the Dolphins. Assuming the Steelers win and the Chiefs can win on the road, that means the Steelers go to Oakland. We feel that's the best bet for the Steelers to win and then control their own destiny because they will have knocked out the 2 seed. They, in fact, become the next seed with the home field advantage. Kansas City would be a lower seed should they be able to not only go on the road and beat the Texans, but then once again go on the road and beat the Patriots. That would leave the Steelers at number 3, the Chiefs at number 5, and then the Steelers, by default of being the higher seed, would host the AFC Championship. Now it seems much more clear, and the reason we like that, and you would think, well, if Kansas City's going to go on the road and beat this team and then go on the road and beat the Patriots, man, they could come in on the road and beat the Steelers at Heinz. True, but that's 3 road games in a row in the playoffs. Very difficult thing to do. 3 wins in a row by itself is difficult, but 3 completely away from your home base, that might make it a tough situation for the Chiefs to tackle. But I'd much prefer that. The Patriots, once again, they talk about an impenetrable I don't think that's the word, but and the fortress that they have there that is Gillette Stadium. They don't lose often there, and as we all know, headsets and radio communication tend to not work there as well. So I would much more prefer, and I would also love to be able to attend a AFC Championship game at home.
Yeah, it would be. I want to be clear. It's not that I don't think the Steelers can win in Foxborough, because they absolutely can. The Patriots this year are not the Patriots of the past. They're not the powerhouse that they once were. They certainly benefit by playing in a division where you have the Jets and the Bills, and normally the Dolphins as well. But the Dolphins have played much better this year. I think we can win in Foxborough. It's just a lot easier to play at home.
Yes, absolutely. So there you have it, folks. In order, maybe just one game on the road and 2 at home before heading to the Super Bowl. Wouldn't that be the optimal path? So that's what you got to look for this weekend. We just kind of want everything to stand pat. If it doesn't, things are going to get shaken up, and maybe the Chiefs are, maybe even can the Raiders? Yeah, no, the Raiders cannot. The Raiders would be going to Houston then anyway. So more than likely, it still looks like it's going to be the Dolphins at home or at Heinz Field, and that's the way we like it.
Yep.
So, Brian, hey, thanks, buddy. Thanks for hopping back on. And, of course, since we don't have you driving in the car, a lot clearer, and I can actually understand what you're saying, even if I can't process everything that we're actually talking about all at once. At least the playoff math has become a little easier.
Yes, absolutely. We're in. We're the 3 seed. We're in. Now, as we've been saying for weeks, all we have to do is win.
And you know what? That's what makes it easy. Well, when I was talking with Terry about this like 2-3 weeks ago, it was like the Raiders had like 9 different ways they could end up in the playoffs. Guess what number 1 is? Win.
Win.
And it's apropos that I'm talking about the Raiders because that was Al Davis's thing. Just win, baby. And that's all the Steelers need to do. Brian, thanks for joining me once again.
Thanks, Joe. And go Steelers.
You're gonna have to pry something out of you. I think we're still losing our minds and our voices from that Ravens game. So I did have a few callers into the show. I'm gonna end up rolling those over into maybe the next episode, and we're gonna address some things in the WTF with Terry, including another Terry. His name is Bradshaw, making some comments. Brian, reserve that. And I also know that you weren't happy that I said John Perry and his crew did an okay job. And then, of course, Ed Bouchette finally comes out, loses his lid, and is complaining about the officials. There were some.
I just got to say, the refs stink. They all stink. There are no good refs. They're all horrible.
Yeah, there was. Like I said, that one call with Shazier I didn't like, but I said it's the rule that's really, I think, handcuffed the referees, where they get a certain angle and there's a certain speed to the play where they can't see, or it sucks because you can't guess at what you're looking at. You have to actually see it, and sometimes there's so many things going on that... Well, this is going to be something else. I think one of these days we're all going to hop on. Maybe we'll do a round table and talk about the officiating, because it is a problem. I just felt that John Perry's crew had been one of the better crews that we've had in a long time. Despite the face mask that wasn't called on AB at the end, luckily he gets in because it was almost like Weddle yanked him into the end zone by his face mask. So thank you, Eric Weddle. You did do something for the Steelers this year.
There you go.
So
and I guess I will give them credit. They did see one mugging of James Harrison during the game, while they missed about 4 others. At least they called the one.
Yeah, by the same token, you know what? Terrell Suggs was pretty much a non-factor in that game too. So,
oh yeah, he was,
and even Doomerville for that matter. So, you know what? I'll take it any day of the week and twice on Sunday. So,
absolutely,
ladies and gentlemen, that'll be a wrap for us for today. So until next time, be safe, be good, and you know what? I never asked everybody if they had a good holiday. We were talking about that off the air. So I hope you had a good holiday weekend, and stay safe again for this one. We'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.